Hi Kate, thanks for joining me.
Hey.
So we've just released the Amicable TV ad, Still a
Yep.
Family, and I just wanted to ask you some questions around it and find out a bit more about how it came about and the key messages from the campaign as well. So I guess firstly, I joined Amicable fairly recently, just a few months ago, and so I wasn't about when the concept came around, and I just wondered, how did the idea for this advert come about?
Unlike, everything else you talk about when it's about divorce, we didn't want to produce anything that was negative or that talked about the pain or the aggro of divorce. We wanted to show how if you could do it really well, that you could have a really positive outcome for your family. And we've been running a campaign all about friends and family on out of homes, on billboards and across the tube and transport network in London and in Manchester. And that campaign was all about how friends and family can be supportive in a divorce scenario. And so we wanted to use that sense of support and optimism in the TV ad as well. So that's kind of the original inspiration.
So the ad follows the story of Eve's parents' divorce through a series of flashbacks of Eve's life. Why did you choose to tell the story of divorce through the eyes of a child?
In this space, I think most professionals would agree that the most important people in a divorce are any children of the family. And very often their voices are overlooked. They're not consulted in a lot of things, and it's something that happens to them. And we know from research that it has an impact on children all the way through their lives. We recently did a lovely video of speaking to adults whose parents had got divorced when they were kids and listening to their stories about how it still impacted them when it had been done badly was really where the sort of kernel of this idea came from. And we thought, well, what about if parents had done it really well? What would that then look like? So that's how we then decided to go for this narrative of how a child's life had been impacted by parents who had divorced amicably. And that was the kind of the key aspect to the campaign.
So why was it important to highlight not just Eve's parents, but also the extended family in the narrative of this campaign?
Increasingly, people are living in blended families. When you divorce or separate, it's unusual if you don't reconnect or have another partner or something, and therefore bringing the sense that you are still a family, but your family is in a different shape, I think was a really nice way of reflecting what's actually happening in society. So I don't think we were doing anything that was particularly trailblazing in the sense that it's not already happening, but I think what we're doing that hasn't been done before is really reflecting what it looks like in this country to be a separated parent right now, and that's a big part of it for me. So I think it was important to get the notion of blended family in, and that you've got step parents and that you've got other children from different marriages, and that's what a family is. So we wanted to reflect what families look like in reality rather than this quite 1950s old-fashioned 2.4 children, a mum and a dad. People say, don't they, it takes a community to raise a child, and I think a blended family is a really beautiful expression of that. And the more people that love your children, the better.
Yeah. How does this ad reflect Amicable's broader mission to change the way that people divorce and separate?
From the moment we set up Amicable, Pip and I said from the very beginning, our mission essentially was to change the way the world divorces. And I think this shows that the traditional ways of divorcing, so going to a solicitor, each having your own solicitor, allowing the solicitors to fight it out by proxy and to speak on your behalf, I think this advert really shows that you can keep control of the process and that your relationship might be ending in one sense, but in another sense it's changing, particularly if you've got kids, because you're still going to co-parent. And the acknowledgement of sharing an ongoing relationship, even though you might not wish you had to at some point as you go through a divorce, but the acknowledgement and the reality of having to share that relationship is a key point in all of this. And at Amicable, we always say that part of going through our process isn't just that we do it for you, because we don't. You're working very hard in the process as well as we are, but we hope that we are embedding skills for the future as you go through that process. So we focus big on communication, so improving that communication between you, which is just one of those skills you need to have in spades when you're trying to co-parent, and your relationship will go through its ups and downs in the future, as well as it did when you were married. So if you've got some of those tools, if you've got the ability to listen, you've got the ability to compromise, or you've learned how to respond rather than react as a consequence of going through this process, then we're doing a good job, and we are genuinely changing society from the bottom up. And that's what we want to do.
Yeah. What would you say to anyone watching the ad that has a potentially negative reaction? For example, you're promoting divorce, or the viewpoint that perhaps you're attacking the traditional system and solicitors. What would your response be?
First of all, divorce is a fact of life. Whether amicable exists or not is not going to make any difference to the divorce rate. The divorce rate hasn't gone up since amicable came to be. So, and the divorce rate now is 42%, so nearly half of all marriages will break down, and we know in cohabiting relationships they're more fragile, so the propensity for those to break down is even greater. So at any point in time, there are lots of people who need some help and support around the ending of a relationship. So I don't think people should be offended by the fact that there's a good company who are trying to promote doing this better rather than the promotion of it in itself. And I think that's the key thing. We are all about trying to do this in a kinder and fairer way. And I'd find that hard to argue against if someone says, well, we know death happens, but we could do death in a better way, then you'd say yes to that. So, and it's the same with divorce. It's a fact of life. We're just trying to do it in a kinder and fairer way. So that would be my first point. And secondly, well, quite frankly, lawyers have had it good for a very long time, and lawyers aren't individually nasty people, but they do work in a system that's adversarial, and that's driven by billing, and conflict fuels billing, and billing fuels promotions, and it's difficult for them to break out of that. There are lots of different alternative ways of getting divorced and separated now, and the government hasn't done a particularly good job of advertising that fact. You go onto any of the government websites, it still even says you need a lawyer or a solicitor, to write a consent order. Well, you don't. We've been to the High Court to prove you don't. But can I get them to change the wording on the government website? No, I can't. So we need to, if the government aren't going to help and put good quality factual information out there, then we've got to step up and do that. And so advertising through a TV ad is a great way of reaching people to say, hey, did you know there are alternatives? And nobody has to use us, but we want people to know that there is a choice and they can choose to do it in a fairer and kinder way.